Luxury cars play upon our emotions, and few luxury car brands do this as consistently well as Alfa Romeo. The Stelvio trades on its look and feel. It's a look and feel that at this price is unmatched. And for 2024, Alfa has given the Stelvio some mild cosmetic upgrades inside and out that give this car an attractive look, and even though it's slightly quirky, it's still just as appealing as it ever was. We last test drove the Stelvio when it came out for the 2018 model year. Not much has changed since then, but it doesn't really need to. This is the car for people that don't want a Japanese or a German SUV. They want something very different. The headlights are the big change for 2024. Gone are the bi-xenon lights, and now there's 3 LEDs. They call them trilobe, and that means they just kind of look like Bugatti Chiron lights, except they're 3 instead of 4. It looks good. The lenses are now smoked. This headlight truly looks like no other SUV on the road, and that is a very difficult thing to do because LED light patterns are everywhere, and these are very distinctive. The Stelvio has a front end that echoes that of a 1930s Grand Prix race car. And that, I just mean it's a very small grille, an inverted trapezoid that reminds me of a Bugatti, and also the way the hood, it all converges towards that center point. A lot of cars are pretty blunt and flat, but not this one. And it's so curved that you can't even really figure out where to put the license plate. Well, there's 2 little holes here, but if you do that, you're gonna cover part of the trim here. It really doesn't make much sense and it looks kind of strange, so if you have to put one, I'm sorry. If not, it looks a whole lot better as it is. Alfa Romeo proves that there's no excuse for generic design. Even the window profile is very unique, and without any badging, I bet you can tell this is the Stelvio versus any of the competition. This is the Veloce trim, so you're getting the red brake calipers, and you're also getting the option for these upsized 21-inch wheels. They're phone dials, like you can put your whole hand through it, kind of like the original ones on a Lancia Stratos or a Lamborghini Countach. It truly, unlike any other SUV, puts extraordinary style into plain view at every single angle. The short overhangs on the Stelvio, that's the amount of space behind the rear tire. That's a big reason why this car looks so trim and tidy looking. It doesn't look like it's a big, massive SUV. That cuts down the visual bulk of an SUV and makes it look more like a sports car. Even though it's really tall here, small glass makes it a little hard when you're in the driver's seat to actually see in the back. But from back here with these big exhaust tips and for 2024, these darkened taillight lenses, it's still looking really sharp. The engines stay the same on the Stelvio, a 2-liter turbo inline-4 with healthy numbers, 280 horsepower, 306 pound-feet of torque, and an 8-speed automatic transmission. All-wheel drive is standard on every trim except the base car. That one is the Sprint. And it's also standard on the Quadrifoglio. That's using a 2.9-liter twin-turbo V6 with over 500 horsepower. Sounds absolutely incredible, and you should get one before they're entirely gone. And here's the fuel economy numbers should you care for the Quadrifoglio. You'll probably care more about this car. Decent. Among Turbo 4s, the Stelvio and the Giulia, I've had a great one for many, many years. Smooth, just enough power, good response from the 8-speed, and paddle shifters, metal ones. Huge ones like you're in a Ferrari. So big that they block the turn signals and the wipers. But you don't need those things, it's an Alfa Romeo. Really, the quietness, the smoothness, and the response of the engine are just really good. The only thing I would say is that just given how aggressive this car looks, especially the exhaust, you don't really hear too much of it. There's no sport exhaust option. And I just would have hoped after all these years that maybe Alfa could have given us just a little bit of a power boost. Say at least 300 horsepower, 320, 330, something like that. Because I think it would be nice, especially given how old this car is right now, just to have some trim that essentially would be kind of between this and the Quadrifoglio. But the Quadrifoglio is going out of production. This car is going out of production. Pretty soon, all of Alfa's gas engines will be out of production. Supposedly, until they reverse course, just like every automaker is these days. No one really knows what they're doing. But what I can say is that Alfa's been making great engines for a long time. And I just think under 30, 40 horsepower, why don't you just go out with a bang and just give us a little bit more? This car is called Veloce. I would expect that. Alfa has done some useful tweaks to this car. For example, there's now a traffic jam assist, so when you're at lower speeds on marked highways, it'll self-steer. It'll do all those things. They got the digital instrument panel. But other than that, this car is basically just as I remember it when it came out for 2018. And to that end, the ride's good, it's pretty quiet. It's pretty conventional when you're going in a straight line. But when you turn, that's when Alfa really gets into its history. The steering is what made the Stelvio famous. It's connected in a way that few modern crossovers are. Fully electric power assist, but it feels, I think, most like an older hydraulic system where you just have that perfect amount of weighting, all of the road feel coming straight through to your fingers, and the response. It is really perfection when it comes to steering, as is the whole chassis. It's rear-wheel drive bias to start. Most Stelvios are all-wheel drive. And even though there's a decent amount of wheel gap here, you're sitting low. This is a much lower center of gravity SUV than something like you'll find in an Audi Q5, other competitors of that nature that are just more conventional. Alfa sweats these little details like the suspension, that extra link in the back, so it's really a 4.5 link suspension as opposed to a regular 4-link. It's got unequal arms in the front underneath that upper wishbone. Again, not typical for what you're gonna find in most other luxury SUVs in the compact to midsize class. There's also a carbon drive shaft. All these little things matter when you're chucking this car through turns, accelerating, braking, enjoying yourself. And yeah, I don't have the race car sound at all, but in terms of just balance, still feels really good. After all of these years, they have not had to do really a single thing, because off the jump, it was tuned right. Now, the only other trim that's new is the Competizione, and that one has the adaptive dampers. That's the only 4-cylinder Stelvio that you can get with adaptive dampers before you step up to the Quadrifoglio. I've driven the Quadrifoglio. It's outrageous, it's incredible. It just puts all of the power to match this chassis. But what you need to know is that the 4-cylinder Stelvios are still delivering all of that agility, all of that poise. They just don't go nearly as quick. Yeah, I am gonna miss this car when it goes away, so whatever they're gonna replace it with, it better be nearly as good. This car is riding on the optional 21s, so that means even less sidewall. And even so, without adaptive dampers, without adaptive air springs, anything like that, not really as rough of a ride as I was expecting. You feel some, like if I drive over this broken section here, like, yeah, you feel it, but it's nowhere near the level of, say, BMW M's and Mercedes AMGs that are much stiffer. Handles great, and these sport seats are very snug, very welcome when you're taking hard turns. The brake pedal, it's got a slightly longer travel than I'm expecting, but when you get on them, they bite pretty hard. I'd half expect a Dalmatian to pop out the back seat because this car is so red, inside and out. I feel like I am going to a 5-alarm fire, and if I was, it's hard to get out of these seats. These are the sport seats, and they are very hip-hugging. And these seats, they look straight out of a Ferrari Daytona from the 70s. The ribbing, the textures, and the bolstering, they are fabulous. It's not particularly the most luxurious interior, but the Stelvio really gets down to business. It is analog inside here. And by that, I mean actual switches and stalks and gauges. Well, some of these stalks are blocked by these giant metal shift paddles that are mounted to the steering column. And there's also an engine start-stop button where you'd never expect it, on the steering wheel. These are the parts that make the Stelvio so uniquely Italian and so carefree. That can be a great thing, it can also be kind of annoying at times. The Stelvio has very narrow rear door openings, so not only do the doors not open that much to get in and out, But once you're inside, it feels like you're in a subcompact car. But still, on this trim, I got rear panoramic moonroof and standard on every Stelvio, heated rear outboard seats. Behind these rear seats, 18 cubic feet. When they're folded, 56, and they're 40-20-40 split, and there's remote levers on either side. The Stelvio has an 8.8-inch touchscreen, integrated nice and cleanly in the dash. It's not plopped here, but it is small when you're comparing it to other vehicles, and it also is just kind of laggy. See how that's going? And it's also using rotary controls, so you get to choose how you use it. Now, it's not exactly what you'll find in other Stellantis model year vehicles. The graphics are okay. I like how they look. They're crisp and they're clear. They're just small, so it's harder to handle at speed. Also, a good thing, navigation is standard as well as wireless device charging. This nav is by TomTom, so the response is actually better than in the rest of the head unit. And Apple CarPlay and Android Auto still require a wire, so that's not wireless like you'll find on the latest Uconnect systems. But driver assistance features, there's a lot of them that come standard. And if you get an option package, you get a few more. But really, everything you see here, traffic jam assist, that's included in this package. It's good, right? It's pretty competitive. Some of these tiles actually work two ways. On the home page, you can actually just swipe up and down to see different data, or you can tap into it and see bigger parts of the data. I'm not really sure what all this means, but there's multiple ways to access this information, and like any infotainment system, once you get used to it, it's fine. Just know that it's not class leading. The Stelvio has 3 different driving modes named D, N, and A. That's clever. D is the most dynamic, and it changes some of the needles and graphics here on the instrument panel, but it doesn't do a whole ton versus the Tonale. That's a newer interface that allows you to have full screen maps and other features. You can still see driver assist. Again, it's a very clear display. I like the design, but it doesn't do a whole lot right now. The 2024 Alfa Romeo Stelvio starts at $45,950. There are 7 trims. The Veloce is the third of 4 trims with the 4-cylinder engine, and it stickers for $60,370 as you see it with destination. The competitors, well, there's a lot of them. Genesis GV70, Jaguar F-Pace, Mercedes GLC, Audi Q5. We could keep going on and on, but the Alfa Romeo is so very different from all of them. Let's face it, if you want the most practical SUV, you're not getting a Stelvio. But if you want the look and the feel, that's why you do it. You like the way a car drives, you like the way it looks when you're in it and when you're looking at it. That's the whole point of this car, because after 7 model years, it still doesn't look like any other car, and it doesn't drive like any other car. So I'm hoping that while Alfa Romeo is still producing plenty of beautifully sounding gas engines, that they'll still produce the Stelvio and all their other cars. Even through an EV transformation, I think Alfa's design is going to carry through. What do you think? And go to CarGurus.com to shop for your next Stelvio or any of its competitors, and you can find them in our YouTube reviews, so subscribe, and we'll see you next time.